Hi, and welcome back. In this video, we will deep dive on the sprint backlog as one of the key artifacts in Scrum. The sprint backlog, in many cases similar to a Kanban board, helps us visualize the amount of work that a team wants to get done during one sprint. You can visualize it by using the same columns as a lot of Kanban teams use, for example, a backlog column, an in progress column, and ultimately a done column. But you don't have to do this. Every sprint backlog is created as part of the sprint planning. And the sprint backlog, similar to the other artifacts in Scrum, comes with a commitment, which is the sprint goal. We will have a dedicated video for that sprint goal. Once a team creates or selects items as part of sprint planning and moves them from the product backlog into the sprint backlog, the next step for them is in many cases to think about how they're going to deliver every single one of those items. And we see a lot of teams breaking those product backlog items, now sprint backlog items, down into individual tasks. Sometimes that makes it easier for the team to coordinate who is going to work on what and how they're going to deliver each of those items. Throughout a sprint, a team uses the sprint backlog to monitor and self-manage how they're getting their work done. The sprint backlog also creates transparency for all the other parties involved, be it the Scrum Master, the product owner, and even stakeholders who sometimes walk into the room and can immediately see where a team is standing. More importantly, a sprint backlog can also help us identify bottlenecks in our development process, especially when we connect the sprint backlog to Kanban principles, for example, limiting work in progress. A good sprint backlog can immediately highlight where our bottlenecks are, and that can be an indicator for us or a topic for our next retrospective. Ideally, at the end of a sprint, all items have been moved from backlog to done. But that doesn't happen always. As we know, life is not ideal. So what do we do with the items that have not been finished? Before we go into the next sprint, we always try to clean up our sprint backlog. My recommendation is to start on the right-hand side. So everything that's done, you can immediately archive them. What I would suggest you do is either you count the number of items that were delivered, or you count and sum up the number of story points that your team has delivered. This is then your velocity. And the velocity helps you make better predictions for future sprints as part of your sprint planning meetings. Next, we take a look at the column work in progress. If you have started working on something, but it's not been done or finished within your current or past sprint, you still move it back into your product backlog. It is then at the discretion of the product owner at which position they want to keep it. Do they still believe it's the highest value and the most important item? Then it ends up at the top of our product backlog. If not, it might end up further below. Last but not least, we take a look at the column on the far left. Anything we had selected for that sprint, but we didn't even get to start with those. And that's fairly simple. Similar to everything that was in progress, we also move these items into the product backlog. And there, again, it is at the discretion of the product owner to determine where they want to position those items. Once we have cleaned up our sprint backlog, we are prepared, we are ready for our next sprint planning. And then everything starts from the beginning. I hope this brief video gave you a good understanding of what a sprint backlog is, how it is connected to our product backlog, its commitment, the sprint goal, and how it provides the team with not only focus, but also visibility and transparency throughout a sprint. And by that, help us do better empirical process control. See you in our next video.